Hello there, this is Al24 World News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. Hundreds of mourners marched in funeral after Zionist security forces killed a Palestinian militant commander and multiple civilians. Outraged Republicans and Trump supporters accuse Biden and its administration of weaponizing the feds against former president. Polls closing in many places in Kenya as Kenyans headed to elect their fifth president since independence. Torrential rains that slammed South Korea's capital Seoul left at least 9 people dead and about 2,800 homes and buildings damaged. Good afternoon, I'm your host Abdurrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. First in our topical news, hundreds of mourners marched in funeral after Zionist security forces killed a Palestinian militant commander and multiple civilians during an unjustified raid in the West Bank occupied. Hussein Burkan in this report.
The bloodshed by Zionists continues. 4 Palestinians, including Ibrahim al-Nabulsi, a senior member of Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigade, were assassinated and dozens injured during an unprovoked Zionist raid in the occupied West Bank, just 2 days after the end of the deadly operation in the Gaza Strip. The Zionist army has confirmed that it had carried out joint operation in Nablus with the internal intelligence services against Ibrahim al-Nabulsi and used a rocket against civilians in the area. Huda al-Nabulsi, mother of the martyr, and hundreds of Palestinians attended his funeral, protesting the criminal act of the occupier.
May God have mercy on him. Tonight, Ibrahim wedding in heaven to Al-Hur al-Ain. May he rest in peace, lives in the hands of God in paradise as it was on earth. The last time I saw him was a month and a half ago. Thank God. I want to say that God rewards everyone, and he, Ibrahim, is now in the hands of God. I was worried when he was in this world. Now I am not worried because he is now with God, who is more merciful than all human beings.
Even with the truce, a Palestinian young man died late Tuesday as a result of injuries he suffered from during the Zionist and justified strikes on the Gaza Strip. At Zionist-occupied areas, Palestinian militants fired at least 200 rockets, most of them intercepted, setting off air raid sirens and sending people running to bomb shelters. There were no reports of serious casualties. Self-defense is the justification of the Zionists for their heinous crimes. Self-defense against civilians, murdered with cold blood, trampling on all international conventions, amid silence of the international community, which is revolting for the tiniest of hostile actions during the Russian-Ukraine conflict.
And to have more explanation over this story, I'm joined live by Hani Al-Jamal, a Palestinian activist from Gaza. Mrs. Hani Al-Jamal, hello there. You hear me?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Hani Al-Jamal, these 16 Palestinian children, among them also Nabulsi in the West Bank occupied, were looking forward to a summer filled with joy. They planned to play football, head to the beach and attend summer camp. But over the course of 3 horrific days, they are lost now. And the question should we ask, who is going to make the Zionist entity accountable for this action? Killing innocent civilians. Who's going to stop these actions?
Well, unfortunately, it's not a matter of who will. It's a matter of who's willing to do so. Once and once again, children have been targeted deliberately. When we look back at the 2021 aggression over Gaza, we have almost a quarter of the injured and killed during the war were children. We have 65 children were killed in 2000 and 2001, and 21. Okay, and after the war, we have been promised a UN probe that will record all the war crimes that have been, done in Gaza during the 2000 and 2001 war over Gaza. In 2021, and after it, nothing happened. We have heard nothing. The international community has not reached out to one of the human rights, associations in Gaza. No change happened. No one was held accountable. So I'm afraid, even in this war in 2022, I'm afraid that we are not even expecting that the Israeli occupation will be held accountable. This time is unfortunately not going to be any different. When we look at kids in Gaza, they have been expected to go back to school by the end of this month. Some children went ahead and bought their school stationery to be ready for the new school year. But unfortunately, 16 of those kids won't be able to do so for no apparent reason of why they are targeted. And the thing is that the Israeli occupation doesn't care. It targets them, and it doesn't care because it's not afraid of any consequences. It has been treated with absolute impunity since day one. And that's the sad truth. When we look at the UN and the international community, whenever we talk about what's happening and we share the pictures and the stories and the videos of those humans who have lived and loved and were lost.
I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, Mrs. Hania Al-Jamal, but we have another question, so we can move on. What is needed now to rebuild again what is always has been destroyed and always will be destroyed in Gaza Strip? What is the aim of building if it's going to be destroyed again?
I guess this is a really valid question. In Gaza, some of the infrastructure that has been destroyed in even even past wars, even wars before, some of the war that happened in 2014, some of the infrastructure and the buildings have not been rebuilt till today, let alone the infrastructure that was destroyed in 2021, let alone the one that has been destroyed during this year. We have been, treated with that notion of why build it if it's going to be blown up again. But the thing is, those are buildings that have been lived by people. People need those structures to live. And the issue is not why build it. The good question that should be asked is why it's destroyed over and over again. Why is Israel destroying residential buildings and not being held accountable for any of it, either financial or as a responsibility?
Understood. Hania Al-Jamal, you join me live from Gaza. Thank you so much for this explanation. Now, moving on, children of Gaza have been significantly affected by the recent violent aggression of the Zionist forces. Lives have been lost, families torn apart, and children are suffering a devastating effect. Zara Farjani.
During the 3-day Zionist assault against Gaza, 16 children have been killed among the 46 Palestinians. For most families, news of the truce between Zionist forces and the Islamic Jihad was bittersweet, as mothers' tears streamed down their faces after losing their precious ones, their offsprings. Rasha Khadoum holds tightly her daughter's pink bag, which will never again be carried on her back. 5-year-old Ala is the first victim among the 16 children killed during the Zionist shelling on Gaza Strip.
She went to her aunt's house located near to the mosque. The bombardment took place while she was there. She wanted to go to the park. Is that part of the objectives of the Zionists? To kill an innocent child? She had nothing to do with the missiles.
Najwa Abu Hamada, another devastated mother, lost her only child during the 56 hours of violence. Khalil was born after 12 years of marriage and 5 failed IVF attempts, only to be brutally murdered by the Zionist army.
How will life continue without my son? I promised him that joy will never find its way to my heart anymore. I whispered in his ear on how to say Shahadatain, to say there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his prophet.
Gaza children are in a real need of support after the conflict-related trauma. Hence, activists in the war-stricken regions dressed as clowns to entertain children amid the rubble of a Rafah building destroyed by the occupation army.
The objective of this initiative is to alleviate psychological pressure and support children who have been affected by the recent war in the Gaza Strip. We try to help the children as much as possible.
Gazan children have repeatedly been experiencing traumatic events and serious violations of their rights while they were recovering from the 11-day bombardment between the Zionist forces and Palestinians in May 2021. The recent attacks came as a shock to them. The international community should condemn these heinous attacks, for the children witnessing the war in Palestine are just like the ones in Ukraine.
Hours after the ceasefire between the Palestinian resistance group and the Zionist forces have revealed the amount of destruction left by the assault in Gaza, hundreds of families in the region have found themselves with no shelters as their homes were reduced to rubble. Osama Ayadi.
Hours after the Egypt brokered ceasefire between the Zionist forces and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad resistance group, families in the Gaza Strip are returning to their homes, which have been reduced to rubble.
It took 10 minutes until they broke down the door. I felt scared and was hoping that someone will come to rescue me.
Residents scrutinized through the rubble at the camp, a war in the valleys that is home to Palestinians whose families fled or were expelled from towns and villages in 1948 during the War of Zionist Entity's creation. Some carried away a small bike and some books, another dragged pieces of furniture away, others looked for family documents and photo albums.
I told the rescue team, you can destroy my home to rescue the people in the next building. They are worthier than my home. The bulldozer destroyed my home, and they opened the way to the building next to me.
The death toll after the Zionist assault has reached at least 47, in addition to over 300 wounded. The human and material cost in the region was very heavy. Despite the ceasefire, Palestinians sounded wary, as most of them have become with no shelter. The Secretary General of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad resistance group warned that if the Zionist enemy does not abide by what was agreed upon, which includes the sole condition of releasing prisoners Khalil al-Awawda and Bassem al-Sa'di, the movement will resume the fighting.
Israel committed to releasing our prisoners, the brothers Khalil Awawda and Sheikh Bassam. This is the essence of the deal. Secondly, in general, we assured in this deal about the unity of the Palestinian people and the unity of the Palestinian squares. This is simply our position.
As a further development in the region, Zionist forces have announced that their troops have arrested 4 armed Palestinians and seized their ammunition.
To a different matter now, after Trump's house raided by the FBI on Tuesday, outraged Republicans and Trump supporters accused Biden and his administration of weaponizing the feds against former presidents. However, the White House said Biden was not even notified by the search. Islam Sid.
Quietness dominated Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate after the unprecedented raid conducted by the FBI agents over Trump's removal of official presidential documents from the White House to his Florida resort. However, the raid did not go unnoticed by his supporters, who continued their protests holding signs accusing the Biden administration and the Democrats of weaponizing the FBI against former president and the Republicans.
What the FBI just did was totally unacceptable.
Meanwhile, Republicans in Congress said there is going to be a substantial investigation by Congress into the actions of the FBI.
Well, certainly this is going to be significant investigations by Congress into the actions of the FBI. This is so unprecedented, so outside the realm of anything that anyone has seen in history, where a sitting president's attorney general has approved raiding the home of the past president and possible future presidential candidate against the sitting president.
On the other hand, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre insisted on Tuesday that Biden was not given advance notice on the FBI search at Trump's house.
The president was not briefed, was not aware of it. No one at the White House was given a heads up. No, that did not happen.
Some experts believe the FBI's act is driven by certain hidden motives, describing it as a juice worth the squeeze.
I absolutely believe that they believe that the juice is worth the squeeze. They believe that there is something very important that they're investigating that would have major consequences if proven. And they're not doing this as a game of gotcha to find some technical violation of the Presidential Records Act or the Government Records Act.
The raid of a former president's home would mark a major escalation added to Trump's investigation accounts, and is one of several probes Trump is facing from his time in office and in private business.
Police department in New Mexico on Tuesday arrested a man 51 years old, Mohammed Sayed, whom they called as the prime suspect in the fatal shooting of 4 Muslim men in Albuquerque since November. A series of killings that have shaken the Islamic community in the state's largest city. All 4 victims were of Afghan or Pakistani origin. One was killed in November and the other 3 in the last 2 weeks. 2 African polls are now officially closed in Kenya, but voting has been extended in places which opened late. This vote follows an intense campaign dominated by debates about living costs, unemployment and corruption. Rimzian.
Kenyans are feverishly waiting for the results of the elections that were held in a quiet atmosphere to find out who will be their next president.
No.
So far there is no fight. I haven't heard of any problems anywhere. Even if they have not announced the winner, I urge young people to remain calm and maintain order.
Preliminary results show a tight race between the 2 main candidates, Deputy President William Ruto and veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga, vying to replace outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta. After 2 of the country's past 3 elections were marred by violence due to disagreements over allegations of cheating, Tuesday's poll is a crucial test for stability in the East African economic hub. Turnout was low on Tuesday when voters also chose legislative and local authority representatives. Several factors were blamed for the disappointing turnout, including drought in the north and voter frustration with the government's failure to tackle economic problems. At 8 o'clock GMT, privately owned Citizen Television showed Ruto leading by 51% to Odinga's 48%. But academics following the media's tally said they had found some errors and cautioned that those results were unofficial. The final result from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is expected in days, but no later than August 16th. The next president will have to deal with rising food, gasoline and fertilizer prices, as well as to repay the loans used to support the infrastructure boom under departing President Kenyatta.
In Asia, torrential rains that slammed South Korea's capital Seoul left at least 9 people dead and about 2,800 homes and buildings damaged as it's lessened on Wednesday. More rain was expected for Wednesday, but the Korean Meteorological Administration predicts that the rainfall would gradually subside. The heavy rainfall on Monday and Tuesday submerged streets and buildings, trapping people in flooded apartments and stranding cars. Russia-Ukraine fire. Russia's defense ministry said on Wednesday, August 10, that Russia forces destroyed a German-supplied Gepard anti-aircraft system in use by Ukrainian forces in the Mykolaiv region. In its daily briefing, the defense ministry also said it had shot down 3 Ukrainian warplanes in the Mykolaiv region, as well as 7 HIMARS missiles in the neighboring Kherson region. A Russian airbase in Crimea has been damaged by several large explosions, killing at least 1 person. It was not immediately clear whether it had been targeted by a long-range Ukrainian missile strike. However, later a senior Ukrainian official appeared to claim responsibility without giving any details.
Today, the issue of Crimea is receiving great attention, and that's good because Crimea is Ukrainian, and we will never give it up. We will not forget that it is the occupation of Crimea which was the beginning of the Russian war against Ukraine.
The Russian firm Transnet said on Tuesday that its supply of Russian oil to 3 European countries through Ukraine has been halted as the shipment payments cannot be proceeded due to sanctions. The company said that the Ukrainian side supported the oil transport due to not receiving funds for these services. Following the opening of Ukraine's Black Sea ports, Kiev expects to be able to export up to 6 million tons of grain per month. Until last week, only 2 million tons of grain per month was leaving Ukraine through the country's alternative overland routes, according to Ukraine experts. Extra capacity will begin to free up overflowing grain soils. Defense Secretary Austin reaffirmed support for Ukraine and allies in the region. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reinforced a pledge that America and its allies will continue supplying military aid to Ukraine on Wednesday. Austin began his 2-day visit to Latvia on Tuesday with a visit to an air base at Leverlad, where U.S. troops are stationed.
And so we'll continue to work closely with you and our other NATO allies and partners around the world to support the Ukrainian people and to bolster our NATO allies and to stand strong against Russia's cruel and premeditated aggression against Ukraine. International efforts to boost Ukraine's military capabilities continue to make a real difference on the battlefield, and that's been critical in helping Ukraine defend itself.
China published a white paper concerning Taiwan. The document repeats the fact that Taiwan is part of China and emphasizes the position and the policies of the leading Communist Party and the Chinese government in the new era. Nabil Khazini.
The show of force on the possible battlefield has eased off, and the language of diplomacy has now taken the stage. Beijing released a white paper entitled The Taiwan Question and China's Reunification in the New Era, a white paper to highlight the red lines and to reiterate the Chinese commitment to a national reunification. The paper says that Taiwan is part of China, and this is an indisputable fact supported by history and the law, and that Taiwan has never been a state, and its status as part of China is unalterable. The paper adds,
"It is the U.S. that is threatening peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan is a part of China's territory. There is no such thing as a median line in the strait. The Chinese armed forces conduct military exercises in waters off China's Taiwan Island to safeguard sovereignty and territorial integrity of China."
These repetitive firm statements from Beijing raise questions about the importance of such a small island to a giant economy like China. Taiwan's GDP is approaching the $700 billion. Semiconductors are a bright highlight of technology. Taiwan is indeed the biggest chip manufacturer in the world and is a vital supplier to the United States, whose president has quickly signed a landmark bill to provide more than $50 billion in subsidies for U.S. semiconductor production and research to avoid any new changes in the global market.
Today I'm signing the law of the Chips and Science Act, a once-in-a-generation investment in America itself, a law that the American people can be proud of.
If China fully reunifies with Taiwan, it will gain immense power over the computer chip industry across the globe.
Wednesday, Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman affirmed that Algerian-Turkish relations are experiencing an important development according to what the two presidents have outlined in a statement to the press on the sidelines of his participation in the opening ceremony of the 5th session of the Islamic Solidarity Games in Konya. Mr. bin Abdulrahman said he was honored to be presenting Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune at the opening ceremony of the session, a participation that reflects the depth of Algerian-Turkish relations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social network platform, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Bye-bye for now.